What's the worst that could happen on an airplane? Maybe this. There's not enough oxygen to survive up here. A freezing wind of hurricane force is roaring through the cabin.
Aloha!
The flight crew call Mayday, but nobody hears. And the airplane is headed for a mountain. It sounds like a nightmare. For everyone aboard Aloha Airlines Flight 243, this is no nightmare, it's reality.
Aloha 243, still up.
When crash detectives discover what happened, their verdict shakes the airline business.
This accident changed aviation history.
Some people choose to trespass in that narrow space between life and death. It's a scary place to be. Surfers get there by chasing killer waves. Just occasionally, fate puts ordinary people, not just thrill seekers, into that same deadly zone, where life hangs by a thread. On the afternoon of April 28, 1988, it will happen in the sky over Hawaii. At 1 p.m., Aloha Airlines Flight 243 is preparing to depart. A Boeing 737 is on the tarmac at Hilo Airport on Hawaii's Big Island, the southernmost of the Hawaii chain. Flight 243 will be just a 35-minute hop to Honolulu on the island of Oahu. Serving the islands means that Aloha works its airplanes hard. They make short flights, but plenty of them. This airplane has been shuttling between the islands since early morning. It'll be its 9th flight today. For the flight crew, it's a routine they've followed for many years.
Aloha 243. Roger. We're anticipating.
Captain Bob Shaunstimer has been flying for 11 years with Aloha Airlines.
Roger.
His first officer, Tomkins, is hoping for promotion to captain after almost 9 years with Aloha.
Did you hear any more about...
Each of the flight attendants has a long service record too, but none so long as Clarabelle Lansing, known to everyone as just CB.
Well, Mr. Kiner, welcome.
Always good to see you, CB. You fixed some good weather for us.
Smooth all the way.
You bet.
She's been flying for 37 years, since before the days of the first jet airliner.
Let me help you with this.
Oh, yeah.
CB is the boss in the cabin, first flight attendant. Michelle Honda, a 14-year veteran, is number 2. Jane Sato Tomita has served 19 years. This is one of the most experienced crews you'll find, in an airplane that's been crisscrossing Hawaii's islands safely for 19 years.
Circuit breakers.
It's made more than 89,000 flights. On this day, only one other 737 in the entire world beats that record.
Checked.
Passengers have no reason to doubt they're in safe hands. Until one passenger, Gail Yamamoto, sees something that makes her pause. But what is it she's concerned about? And how worried should she be?
Do I say something?
Patricia Aubrey lives in Hilo, but has an appointment today in Honolulu. At first, she opts for the very front of the airplane, in row 1. But somehow she feels uneasy and decides to move further back. She chooses a free seat in row 17. At 1:25, Flight 243 is ready for takeoff. This airplane often rattles and shakes on takeoff and landing, but it's something the crew and regular passengers have grown used to. What's there to worry about?
Yellow departure. This is Aloha 243, climbing through 3000.
Roger, climbing to flight...
Though he's the captain, Bob Shaunstimer has chosen to take charge of radio links with air traffic control. It's Tomkins who'll fly the plane to Honolulu. Most of the flight time is taken up in climbing to their cruising altitude. It'll take 20 minutes to climb to 7,300 meters. For many passengers, soaring high over the Pacific is all part of the daily routine. People like salesman Howard Kitaoka in row 5. He makes this trip often. When you've seen the view 100 times, 35 minutes is precious time to catch up on paperwork. The flight's so short that the attendants serve drinks while they're still climbing. They can move around, but the passengers are still strapped in. It's 1:45. 20 minutes into the flight, the aircraft is at cruising height.
Honolulu Center, Aloha 243, leveling off at 240.
The crew relax.
See, where's that National Weather Service weather station out here? Is that in the old tower?
In perfect flying weather, everything is following the familiar pattern.
Do they?
What's that?
How to get down?
We've lost pressure.
I saw a brilliant flash of light and boom.
Everything was being sucked out of the plane.
Here's what's happened. An explosive decompression has torn away 35 square meters of fuselage.
We were in a tremendous blast of wind. The wind blast was unbelievable.
A mass of things just went whoosh out the plane. You know, hair was up here. Everybody was in their seat, except the stewardesses. I saw the stewardess get smashed down in the aisle. I could see her hair blowing, and I could see blood, but that's all I could see of her.
Jane Sato Tomita has been struck by debris at row 2. Michelle Honda has been thrown to the floor at row 15. There's no sign at all of CV Lansing.
I will take control column.
I can't hear you!
Only seconds have passed since the explosion. The wind noise makes it impossible for the flight crew to communicate.
Back
I
there.
can't hear you!
Lost pressure.
Now, for the first time, they gain a sense of what's happened. Visible over a mound of tangled debris, there's blue sky where the airplane roof used to be. The first 5 rows are now completely exposed to the sky on both sides of the plane. The initial threat of being sucked out is past since the airplane's now completely depressurized. But passengers are still in danger.
My seatmate was flopping out outside the aircraft because at that point it was just the floor and no walls or seating. And so I grabbed him.
The cold and oxygen deprivation are both potentially deadly.
Just imagine the scene up there. The top of the airplane broken off. The passengers don't have any ability to get supplemental oxygen because the critical tubing that feeds that oxygen is now gone. And at 24,000 feet, with very little to breathe up there, the passengers become incapacitated. That's called hypoxia. If you stay up at that altitude for any prolonged period of time, you become more and more physically disabled. With the top of the airplane gone, you now have 300-mile-an-hour winds blowing into that cabin. That's 3 times hurricane-force winds. Those people were dressed for Hawaii in the springtime, not minus 50-degree temperatures. Any period of time at 24,000 feet, and those people will die.
High above the Pacific Ocean, an extraordinary drama is unfolding. An explosion at 7,300 meters aboard a Boeing 737 bound for the Hawaiian island of Oahu tears 35 square meters of fuselage from the airplane, exposing passengers to the sky. The cabin is depressurized with no emergency oxygen supply. Unless they rapidly reach a lower altitude where they can breathe again, the passengers will die. Captain Bob Shaunstimer takes over command of the aircraft from First Officer Mimi Tomkins. He begins an emergency descent, dropping 1,200 meters per minute, its speed now increasing to more than 500 kilometers an hour. As the aircraft hurtles down, passengers face a new terror. Wreckage blocks their view of the cockpit, and when the airplane split apart, the nose dropped down by around 1 meter. The plane is held together by just the narrow floor beams.
The floor was buckling up, and you could tell the plane was bending in the middle.
Michelle Honda can't go forward far enough to see whether the pilots are alive or dead. She tries to make contact via the intercom.
Can anyone hear me?
The wires are severed. As she struggles forward to try to reach the cockpit, she gets asked the one question she can't answer.
Do we have a pilot?
I don't know.
Do we have a pilot?
I do not know. Can you fly a plane?
The terror of those on board can only be imagined as she asks the one question no airplane passenger wants to hear.
Can you fly a plane?
Michelle Honda was coming up and cupping her hands and yelling in everyone's ear individually, "Can you fly a plane?" I was like, what? You know, get out of here. Is the pilot gone too? You know, because you couldn't tell if there was anybody up there.
Do you know how to fly a plane?
No!
First Officer Mimi Tomkins tries to alert air traffic control at Honolulu. Recordings from the cockpit voice recorder, the black box, analyzed later by accident investigators, provide a dramatic record of exactly what took place. The nearest place where they can try to land is the island of Maui. Kahului Airport lies between two volcanic mountains. Between them and safety lies a 3,000-meter-high summit. To fly from the location of the explosion to the safety of Kahului Airport, the pilot needs to carefully maneuver, avoiding this high ground. Can the fragile aircraft survive the stresses of turning, or, if they ever reach the airport, of landing? And how can those on board survive? Jane Sato Tomita is barely conscious. Howard Kitaoka clutches her hand. The only faint sign of life is once when Jane squeezes back.
I'm not exactly sure if she was conscious, but I did manage to squeeze her hand, and she responded by squeezing my hand, and we just held hands. The simple squeeze of the hand at a time like that is very, very emotional.
Aloha 243. Do you read me?
Mimi Tomkins is not getting through to Honolulu Air Traffic Control, so she switches to the frequency for the tower at Maui's Kahului Airport.
Maui Tower. Aloha 243. Maui Tower. Aloha 243.
Aircraft calling tower, say again.
Aloha 243. For inbound landing.
At 1:48, 3 minutes after the explosion, the crew make their first voice contact with the ground.
Unpressurized. Declaring an emergency.
Aloha 243, say your position.
Paducah, to the east of Makina Point. Descending out of 11,000. Request clearance into Maui for landing. Request the emergency equipment.
Airport fire station?
We have an Aloha 737 5 minutes out.
Approximately 20 miles. Cleared to runway 02. Decompression problems.
Pilot is declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mawithar. In the station. Attention in the station. We have an in-flight emergency. We have a 737, 5 minutes out, 20 miles. Runway 2. Souls on board, crew on board is unknown. It has decompression problems at this time. Runway 2.
Aloha 243. Okay, the equipment is on the field. It's on the way.
At 3,000 meters, flying west of the mountain, the pilot slows the aircraft and as gently as possible begins the right-hand turn towards Kahului. Passengers sense that someone must be in control of the aircraft.
I've had some training as a pilot, and we were wings level. It wasn't in a dive or a roll, it was wings level. At that moment, I thought, we have a chance.
Meanwhile, those on the ground are unsure about what kind of crisis they're facing. It's a small airport. An airliner in trouble will test the fire crew's experience. For the air controller, it's hard to hear the airplane at all.
Just to verify again, you're breaking up. Your call sign is 243. Is that correct?
Or 244.
Aloha 243! Aloha 243!
Aloha 243.
Plan straight ahead for runway 02. I'll keep you advised of any wind change.
"4 minutes after the explosion. At this lower altitude, they're able to remove their oxygen masks. With their speed having dropped to a little over 380 kilometers an hour, the wind noise decreases just enough for them to hear one another.
You want me to call for anything else?
No.
Aloha 243. Looks like we've lost a door. We have a hole in the left side of the aircraft.
But the tower can't hear this new information. They've lost contact with the aircraft. Their transmissions aren't being picked up.
Aloha 243, you still up?
Is this a radio malfunction or something worse?
Aloha 243.
Hearing nothing from the stricken aircraft, the controller fears the worst.
Aloha 243.
Aloha 243, you still up?
Aloha 243, if you still hear, please
Ident.
Affirmative.
Aloha 243, roger. I got your ident straight away. Cleared to land, wind 040
at 20 knots.
Communication is restored, but the crew's ordeal is far from over.
Cabin, do you hear?
Now Mimi Tomkins tries to contact the cabin by intercom, but there's no response.
Well, the crew doesn't really know what's going on behind them. The airplane is still flying. The captain now has to maintain his focus on flying that airplane, but he doesn't know what real damage exists behind him.
Tell him we'll need assistance to evacuate.
Right. Maui Tower, Aloha 243. Can you hear me on tower frequency?
Aloha 243, I hear you loud and clear. Go ahead.
We're going to need assistance. We can't communicate with the flight attendants. We'll need assistance with the passengers when we land.
Okay, you're going to need an ambulance, is that correct?
Affirmative.
During the descent, passengers experience moments of pure terror.
The plane kept vibrating and shaking, and the luggage racks were falling in, and there was electrical wires flying around zapping, and you know, pretty much pandemonium, but it looked like the plane was ripping in half.
And suddenly, there's a new problem for the flight crew to handle.
Feels like manual reversion.
What?
The flight controls feel like manual reversion.
It feels to the pilot as though hydraulic systems, like power steering in an automobile, have now failed. The airframe is under great stress. They need to land as soon as possible.
Can we maintain altitude okay?
There are so many thoughts that go through your head. Like one of my thoughts was, man, don't put this thing in the water. I mean, you have people around you are hurt, unconscious. I didn't want to have to say, well, I'm gonna try to save this guy first or that guy first, whatever. And don't put it on the water.
The crew fear that critical wiring and control cables may have been severed. Have any of the airplane's vital parts been damaged?
Let's try flying with the gear down.
All right, you've got it.
There are lights to indicate whether or not the landing gear has safely deployed. The main undercarriage has extended as normal. But the light showing that the nose wheel has extended doesn't come on.
The last thing the pilot wanted to see, especially with his airplane in the condition it was in, was that he didn't have a nose gear, because when the nose touched down on the runway, it would have broken the airplane apart, therefore breaking probably the fuel tanks apart, which could lead to a very dramatic fire and explosion.
A second attempt to extend the landing gear. The nose gear light is still out, but the radio link is so bad, the tower is still trying to assimilate the crisis.
Aloha 243.
Just to verify, you do need an ambulance, is that correct?
They still don't understand. Affirmative.
Roger, how many do you think are injured?
We have no idea. We can't communicate with the flight attendants.
Okay, we'll have the ambulance on the way.
There's a possibility that we won't have a nose gear.
Now Bob Shaunstimer has to make a critical decision. Should he wait for confirmation that the undercarriage is down, or land anyway?
The textbook in this case would tell the pilots to overfly the airfield so that the air traffic controllers can look at the landing gear and give them a report whether it's up or down. The pilots would then have to maneuver the airplane all the way around the airfield, come in for an approach, and land.
But with an airplane which might break apart at any moment, that's out of the question.
Tell them we've got problems. But we're gonna land anyway, even without a nose gear. So they should be aware that we don't have a nose gear indication down.
Aloha 243.
Wind now 050. The emergency equipment is in place.
Okay, be advised, we have no nose gear. We are landing with no nose gear.
Okay, if you need any other
Assistance advised.
You'll need all the equipment you've got.
Maui is not an ideal place to head for with the damaged airplane. The island's exposed north shore lies directly in the path of the trade winds.
I've done that landing a lot of times, and that particular approach corridor is very windy because of the mountain on one side and mountain on the other. So it's a very bumpy approach. But that's basically all we had.
Get in a brace position. Brace yourself, get down.
Any kind of in-flight turbulence, that would have put great stresses on the front end of the airplane, and there's a high probability that the cockpit would have separated from the rest of the fuselage, catastrophic loss of the airplane, and a loss of life.
With the airfield now in sight, Bob Shaunstimer has more critical decisions to make. He begins to slow the aircraft for landing.
Let's try flaps 15.
An airplane's flaps are sliding panels at the back of the wings. To increase lift at low speeds, they need to be extended during takeoff and landing.
Is it easier to control with the flaps up?
Yeah. Put them back to 5. Can you give me a V speed for a flaps 5 landing?
No two aircraft landings are the same. Pilots have to factor in many things: the wind speed and direction, passenger and fuel load, and the length of the runway before them.
Do you want the flaps right down as we land?
What?
Do you want the flaps right down as we land?
Yeah. But after we touch down.
Okay.
A complicated formula provides the VREF, indicating the safe landing speed. Even in a crisis like this, pilots have to reach for the manual. Extending the flaps fully will help act as a brake once they touch down, but to do it earlier could stress the airframe to breaking point.
What you have to remember is that the pilots weren't trained to handle a situation like this. With the top of their airplane missing, they became test pilots. The aerodynamic effects of the airplane were drastically different than they were used to. They really had to fly by the seat of their pants.
Aloha 243, wind now 050.
At 20.
VREF 40 plus 30, flap 1 through flaps 15.
120.
Using her flight manual, the first officer makes the complicated calculation that will give their correct landing speed.
Right.
The safe speed for landing, taking into account the length of Kahalui's runway 2, is calculated to be 152 knots, 282 kilometers an hour. As the airplane slows, it becomes much harder to control. And so the pilot has to make another crucial call. Speeding up to keep control means he'll hit the runway faster than he should. He gambles that the higher speed landing is still the best option.
Our approach speed, I felt, was hot. I mean, we were coming in hot. I don't know, don't ask me how many miles an hour it was, because I don't know. But from other landings, we were coming in fairly hot.
Crash rescue teams prepare themselves for a worst-case scenario. At high speed and without the nose gear, a crash landing followed by a catastrophic fuel fire now seems inevitable.
Under these conditions, the lack of a nose gear could have been a death sentence for everybody aboard this aircraft.
A Boeing 737 with 95 people on board has suffered an explosive decompression near the Hawaiian island of Maui. It's still airborne, but only just, with 35 square meters of fuselage missing from the Aloha plane. As they prepare for an emergency landing, warning lights indicate that the forward landing gear has not deployed. If so, the airplane will most likely crash and burn. In the 12 horrifying minutes since the explosion, some passengers are convinced they're not going to make it alive.
I thought it was going to go in the water, and I was eaten by sharks. And then we saw the mountain, and I didn't think we were going to make it over it. I just knew we were going to crash into that mountain. And then when we could tell, we could see the airport, and then, you know, then I burned to death because the plane blew up when we hit the runway.
Suddenly, the news the pilots have been praying for.
The gear is down. Inform Colwyn Command, the gear is down.
Okay, thanks. Aloha 243, just for your information, the gear appears down.
The gear appears down.
Want me to go to flaps 40? Help you?
No, on the ground.
The crew have had to make life or death decisions. In the next few seconds, they'll find out whether they're the right ones. Michelle Honda cradles her injured colleague as the critical moment approaches. Passengers comfort one another in what may be their last moments alive.
A woman that was sitting next to me, and her husband, he was on the other side in the next row up, and she was next to me, and they were reaching their hands out, and they were trying to touch fingers to say goodbye. That was a really touching moment for me. It was when I really knew I was going to die, because they were saying goodbye to each other.
What gave me the most comfort was knowing that my wife and my kids knew what I felt. That was great comfort. I didn't need to tell them anything further, that I love you, or, you know, I worry about you, because I felt that I had already said that.
Though the forward undercarriage has extended, the crew still can't be certain whether it is locked in place or whether it'll collapse on landing. If it doesn't hold firm, 40,000 kilos of airplane traveling at close to 320 kilometers an hour will smash nose down onto the tarmac.
One reverse.
Okay.
Thrust reverser.
Aloha 243, just
Shut it down where you are.
Okay.
everything's fine. The gear did it. The fire trucks are on the way.
Okay, shut it down.
Put it up. Oh, God.
In this extraordinary video, captured moments after landing, the amount of damage the airplane suffered is difficult to comprehend. An emergency evacuation of passengers who escaped injury has just been completed. Some injured passengers have still to be helped from the plane. How it flew for those 13 terrifying minutes seems astonishing. Captain Bob Shaunstimer is thanked by passengers who just minutes before had expected to die. The tension is released.
Boy, I just said, yes, baby. That's all I said. Pilot did a tremendous job.
Patricia Aubrey hugs her heroine, Michelle Honda.
I was crying, and of course everybody was traumatized, looking at the plane and looking at the people bleeding, and just, I kept touching myself going, I'm here. I can't believe I'm still alive.
Her last-minute impulse to switch seats saves her from injury, maybe from death.
Something was telling me not to sit there, because I didn't have a good reason to move, you know. My guardian angel was tapping me on the shoulder and telling me to move.
A final desperate head count by Michelle Honda confirms the crew's worst fears. C.B. Lansing, the veteran of 37 years flying for this airline, is missing. A sea search begins in the area of ocean where the explosion took place. Neither body nor wreckage are found. Jane Sato Tomita has started to recover. 7 passengers are seriously hurt, the worst injury a skull fracture. But how have the rest survived? At the moment of decompression, it's just their seatbelts which made the difference between life and death.
They went poof, loud noise, and it just, the whole thing come apart. And I personally thought we were all gone, and we were fastened, all had our seatbelts fastened, well, most of us evidently, or would have lost a lot more.
But there's something else. At the most critical moment, Maui's notorious high winds died away.
I was amazed to see front of the fuselage missing. What was so funny about the whole thing is that when it came in, had no wind. Yeah, I believe if you did have that wind, the aircraft wouldn't have made it. It would have split into 2 pieces. And it's a miracle. It's very much a miracle.
This is one of the most remarkable flying events in history. No airplane has ever landed with this amount of damage. The only thing that was holding the forward section cockpit to the rest of the fuselage were the floor beams. Basically, they were hanging by a thread.
From a close study of the fuselage, crash investigators tried to determine how the airplane's structure remained in one piece. The critical factor proves to be the precise location of the explosion.
The thing that saved them was that because the damage was across the top of the airplane, as the nose tried to bend down, these members through here are in tension, and it kept them in line, it kept them straight. So even though it was almost ready to break off, the structure was still strong enough here to keep it together. If this damage had been along the bottom, and the nose is trying to bend down this way, the structure would have been, this similar structure would have been in compression, and it would have buckled, and the nose would have certainly come off. So it was fortunate that the damage was across the top.
How does the roof of a jet airliner simply blow away? The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, is tasked with discovering what happened. Investigators pull the airplane's records, something like an automobile service history, and suspicion falls right away on the airplane itself. The best evidence for what happened, the missing fuselage section, is now lying at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. But by carefully piecing together the clues they do have, investigators hope to solve one of the most spectacular accidents of all time. In the 38 years since its launch in 1967, more than 5,000 737s were sold. Somewhere in the world, a 737 takes off every 5 seconds. The accident airplane was number 152 off the production line, delivered in May 1969. The airplane was designed for a 20-year service life and 75,000 flights. This one had exceeded that number, though many were of short duration. Its fuselage was under constant stress because of pressurization.
The fuselage of the airplane is actually breathing. It expands and contracts depending on altitude. When it's on the ground, it's in a contracted status. When it's at altitude, 24,000 feet, the fuselage expands. So the airplane is constantly cycling. That's pressurization. That will weaken the structure over a long period of time. And given the history of this airplane being a very high cycle airplane, that probably had something to do with weakening the structure of the fuselage.
With thousands of 737s taking to the skies each day, investigators need to be certain what made this one burst apart. An Aloha Airlines Boeing 737 bursts apart in mid-air over Hawaii. After 13 extraordinary minutes in the air, it makes an emergency landing on the island of Maui. Investigators need to discover what caused this spectacular incident. In Washington, D.C., Jim Wildey is one of the NTSB team who worked the case. His expertise as a metallurgist proves crucial.
I got a call about 2 in the morning, in the middle of the night, from my boss, and there had been an accident in Hawaii. They were putting the team together. I hopped on a plane and went to Hawaii.
He takes samples from the remaining fuselage and back in the lab discovers something barely visible to the naked eye. Hairline cracks like this, beside the holes where rivets had been. Figuring out how those cracks came to be there means going back to basics, to the way the Boeing 737 was put together. Airplanes are built from many separate panels. Where they overlap, they're bonded together by a powerful adhesive known as epoxy. Rivets hold the panels tight together while the epoxy sets hard. On the Aloha airplane, there's telltale discoloration inside the overlapping joints. Here is the vital clue.
You can see now where the dark material is the epoxy that was used to bond the 2 layers of the lap joint together. The white material you see here is corrosion damage of the aluminum fuselage skin. So the original intent was that the stress that's trying to pull one skin away from the other skin piece, the stresses would go through the bonding and not through the rivets. Of course, as this thing becomes disbonded, now the rivets themselves are loaded, and especially this top row of rivets, and this is the row of rivets we think that had the fatigue cracking in it that led to the eventual opening of the roof structure on the Aloha 737 airplane.
The files reveal that Boeing warned airlines, including Aloha, of problems with some early 737s. If the epoxy isn't applied at exactly the right temperature, if the panels have moisture or dirt on them, the bonding can fail. In warnings and service bulletins, some issued over 15 years earlier, Boeing spells out the danger. The Hawaii climate with humid and salt-laden air helps corrosion to occur. But instead of grounding airplanes for a nose-to-tail examination, Aloha has inspectors make occasional checks, often at night, when those on duty are least alert, working under artificial light. Those tiny cracks escape detection.
These cracks go unrepaired, and now you have an airplane that is a ticking time bomb.
There are other problems. Boeing's service bulletins and what are called airworthiness directives issued by the Federal Aviation Administration are often difficult to understand.
Airworthiness directives are very complex and read like a legal document. Aloha needed to have someone who could read that document and interpret it into plain English for the mechanics, the wrench turners. That never happened.
An airplane that has been worked so hard, serviced by mechanics who don't fully understand the briefings, is a recipe for disaster. Investigators now believe they know why the airplane burst open, but they don't yet know how.
I was flying back from Hawaii to Los Angeles, and while I was in the air, I got a message that that we needed to interview this passenger who had apparently seen a crack as she was getting on the accident flight.
You saw something as you got on this airplane, which you pointed out to your roommate.
Cynthia Johnson.
Yeah, Cynthia. Talk me through it. What did you see?
What I saw was to the right of the door where the paint was white. Well, it was a crack. It was like not a hole exactly, but the metal on top had come away from the metal below. I was going to tell the flight attendant, you know, but they were busy and we had to take our seats.
Well, yeah, you figured, you know, they know what they're doing. It's their airplane.
I didn't want to make a fuss or anything.
No, absolutely.
The witness saw cracking in this area, and we found fatigue cracking back in here. So this is the line where the fatigue cracking joined up. One piece came down this way and folded off, and the other piece went across the top and came off to the right side.
But something still doesn't make sense. Boeing designed the 737 and other of its aircraft so that this should never happen. Every 10 inches along the airplane are what are called tear straps inside the fuselage to strengthen it. If a tear begins, it should only reach the next strap before shooting off at a 90-degree angle. Though there's a hole in the aircraft, it acts like a safety valve.
The purpose of the tear strip is to confine any kind of rip or tear in the fuselage skin to a 10-inch square, basically. If you allow it to propagate beyond this 10-inch square, you could then compromise larger sections of the fuselage and cause a blowout. The 10-inch square allows a controlled decompression and confines any structural damage to a very small area.
So why has the safety valve failed here? The NTSB believe there were so many cracks in the fuselage that they simply joined together, running right through the tear straps.
The Aloha airplane was kind of unique in a couple of ways. The way it was operated was with very short flights, so you had large numbers of these pressurization cycles, and stress was going on and off on these rivet locations. And secondly, with the disc bonding, all this stress is now going through the rivets, and that led to the linking up of these cracks and then the roof coming off the airplane.
But is that the final answer on what happened to Flight 243? A new theory claims to shed fresh light on those dramatic events. Matt Austin is an engineer who lives in Honolulu. The story of Flight 243 both appalls and fascinates him.
I flew very regularly on Aloha Airlines, and I'd been on that plane about a week before it actually lost the roof. You could tell that something was loose in the airplane. It's just like when you're in an old car and you hit a bump, you can hear the rattles in it that you won't hear in a new aircraft. In this case, when the aircraft landed, there would be noises and rattles you wouldn't hear on a newer aircraft.
He begins his own investigation, scrutinizing the 4,000 pages of evidence and photographs gathered during the official inquiry.
I am an expert in explosion dynamics and how pressure vessels explode, what causes them to explode, which way the cracks run as they're coming apart. In the case of the Aloha accident, the main focus from the aeronautical industry was they were looking at it as an airplane structural failure, whereas I analyzed it from the point of view of a pressure vessel failure.
As he reviews the evidence, one question keeps recurring. Why is CB Lansing sucked out of the aircraft and not her colleague Jane Sato Tomita? Jane was further forward than CB at the crucial moment. Jane was at row 2. CB was at row 5. The NTSB believes the roof separation began near row 3. Passenger testimony gathered shortly after the incident suggests that CB Lansing was sucked upwards and to the left, but not forward.
I was on the aisle, on the right. So I look up from my magazine, I see a pair of legs go up and out on the left, just back of first class. From where I was, if the nose was 12, this is at 11, yeah?
Forensic evidence suggests another possible scenario. Michael Sweet, an ex-cop, is now a specialist in blood spatter analysis. By studying bloodstains at crime scenes, he can help put a killer behind bars or free the innocent. He examines official photographs of the 737 fuselage.
This is a large photograph of the left side of the airplane. The front would be in this location. There's what we suspect to be a bloodstain pattern on the right beside the window, right here.
Could this bloodstain be where CB Lansing's head impacted with the outside of the fuselage? The analyst believes so.
Well, the fact that there are bloodstains on the side of this airplane suggests to me that the blood source in this case was momentarily trapped when it came into contact with the side of the airplane. If the flight attendant in this case was ejected outside of a gaping hole, I would expect her to disappear almost immediately and not leave any bloodstains on the side of the airplane.
This analysis suggests only that she was trapped, but without explaining how or why. Matt Austin believes he has the answer. On April the 28th, 1988, a Boeing 737 owned by Aloha Airlines in Hawaii suffers an explosive decompression in midair. Amazingly, it lands safely with the loss of one crew member. Investigators blame metal fatigue due to poor maintenance. But a new and controversial theory has emerged, challenging at least part of the chain of events. What if a safety hole has opened up as it was designed to do, but directly above the flight attendant? Matt Austin believes CB Lansing is sucked into the safety hole, momentarily blocking it.
All of the air that's trying to escape has no place to go, so it built up a huge pressure spike, and that's what blew the roof off the top of the airplane.
What he's describing is known as a fluid hammer. In scientific terms, air is fluid, as is water. Here's a simple demonstration in a bathtub.
The water is in fact escaping through the drain. As we move the drain plug back down toward the hole, it will immediately slam shut and create a force, which is a simple example of a fluid hammer.
He believes this phenomenon, on a giant scale, caused the accident.
It's very tragic, but if we don't look at the forensic evidence that's left, then we won't understand exactly what caused the explosive decompression and possibly prevent a future occurrence.
The NTSB say that the fluid hammer theory is valid scientifically, but for them the evidence still points to something simpler, a virtually simultaneous failure in the airplane's many weak spots.
The safety board's investigations are never really closed. We always would take into account any new information that comes out. I believe in the case of the Aloha accident, we have not changed our probable cause, and we still are sticking with the probable cause as we determined back in 1988.
Since the crucial physical evidence was never found, what happened on board at the precise moment of explosion will probably never be known. Aloha Airlines management took most of the blame for their poor maintenance regime. The NTSB demanded that the Federal Aviation Administration do a much better job enforcing maintenance standards. Boeing had already improved their manufacturing process to prevent the adhesive becoming so easily contaminated. What happened on Flight 243 made flying safer. Soon after, Congress passed the Aviation Safety Research Act.
This accident had a very profound effect on the aviation industry and the way we look at aging airplanes, old aircraft. We changed the way we monitor how they age, the way we inspect them, and of course now how we manufacture them. We use different processes. This was a very critical accident for aviation history.
Those 13 terrifying minutes also left their impact on the survivors of Flight 243.
I had to go through a healing process. I took fear of flying classes, and the old saying of you fall off a horse and you get back on it is very accurate, but it's a lot tougher to actually do it.
Patricia Aubrey had to find a way of dealing with the memories also. Her way was to revisit the same piece of airspace where the terror unfolded.
I'd go flying with my psychologist. You go through what they call desensitization, where you confront your fear and you just do it so many times that you can do it without having a bad reaction. Before that happened, if something bad happened to me, I'd go, I hate life. But I don't hate life. I can deal with it. Bring it on. I'll take care of it. I'd much rather be alive.
There's one further legacy of that fateful day. The ocean never did surrender the body of CB Lansing. Instead, a memorial garden honoring the veteran flight attendant was planted at Honolulu Airport, beneath the big Hawaiian sky where she spent the better part of her life, and where it was so suddenly ended. 1,000 meters above the frigid North Sea, disaster strikes. A helicopter is crippled in the middle of a sudden storm. The pilots struggle for control as it sinks helplessly towards the sea. They're far from land, off the radar screens. No one knows exactly where they are. In the days that follow, investigators search for the truth hidden in this tangled wreck. The cause of the crash shocks those involved and reveals a hidden danger that reaches far beyond the North Sea.
3,000? Right here. We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Even power, Aero Crew 603. We are in an emergency.
The need for oil drives men to some of the most unpleasant places on Earth. This is one of them. The North Sea divides Britain from mainland Europe. It's a shallow sea, and the cruel winds that race across it can whip up enormous waves. The sea is cold, grey, and violent. But there's oil out here. And so dozens of drilling platforms and thousands of men must face whatever the weather throws at them. The only efficient way to get the men out there is by helicopter. The flights are rough and long, up to 500 kilometers each way. After years, the trip has become largely routine. The danger below forgotten by many.
What was that?
But on a cold January morning in 1995, 18 men flying over the North Sea were faced with a horrible question.
Mayday, mayday, mayday! Tail rotor failure! Ditching!
Could they survive in this extremely hostile environment?
Oh, God! Oh.
January the 19th, 1995. Commander Ced Roberts and First Officer Lionel Sole work for Bristow Helicopters in Aberdeen, Scotland. Their job is to ferry oil workers out to the oil platforms in the North Sea. By mid-morning, they've completed one trip already and are getting ready to head back out. Their helicopter is Super Puma 56 Charlie. While it's being checked out and refueled, Flight Officer Sole checks the flight logs, and Commander Roberts goes through the weather reports, which are updated every 2 hours.
Oh, weather's okay. Good for January.
This is where they're heading, the North Sea. The discovery of oil here in the 1960s was a shot in the arm for the British economy. Brent crude, as the oil is known, is a light, sweet crude, ideal for turning into gasoline. And its price is a benchmark on the international oil market. It helped turn Aberdeen, the Scottish port city closest to the oil rigs, into a boom town, the European oil capital. All the leading oil companies have offices here. The city is focused on getting the black gold ashore. Because the rigs are so far offshore and the weather so unpredictable, helicopters are the only way to reliably ferry workers back and forth. Hundreds of thousands of people make the trip every year. The Super Pumas are one of the workhorses of the North Sea oil industry. Used around the world by industry and military, they're durable, tough, and made to withstand the elements. There are more of these helicopters flying offshore here than anywhere else in the world. The passengers heading to the platforms today gather in the heliport's departure lounge. They all work for the Texas company Marathon Oil. The North Sea has scores of oil fields. They're divided up between several countries, including England and Norway. The governments then sell the rights to drill to a variety of oil companies. Marathon operates 3 platforms in the so-called Bray field: Bray East, Bravo, and Alpha. North Sea oil platforms are like cities that never sleep. They stand on the seabed, held up by enormous legs made of either metal or concrete. Below each one, pipes snake out to the seabed. Some punch straight down, others fanning out at an angle for up to several kilometers. The same platform may be extracting both oil and natural gas at the same time. Out here, you're surrounded by the sea, with nowhere to go. The weather is often horrible, and the work on a rig can be rough, dirty, and dangerous. It's difficult to find and retain the skilled workers needed to pull the oil from the sea, so the platforms are built to keep the workers happy. Movies, internet cafes, gym equipment, even great food are all provided by management to ensure the men are entertained. During 12-hour shifts, workers handle heavy equipment and deal with great heights or great depths. But there are strict rules too. To protect the safety of everyone on board, there's no drinking, and smoking is severely restricted.
Mayday! Explosion and fire on the Piper platform. All personnel abandoned.
One of Britain's worst disasters happened in the North Sea oil fields. In 1988, on Occidental Petroleum's Piper Alpha platform, the gas exploded and set fire to oil. One 167 men died. The potential for disaster is never far away. But on this January day, the Marathon oil workers prepare as they always do. All 16 are scheduled to spend 2 weeks on Marathon's Alpha platform, followed by 2 weeks off. To these men, getting to work has become routine. But getting a ticket on this flight calls for something a little out of the ordinary. None of them is permitted to board a helicopter without first going through this: helicopter underwater escape training. Their lives may depend on knowing how to get out of a submerged helicopter or oil rig, and knowing what to do once they find themselves in the chilly North Sea. Several accidents over more than 20 years have driven home the point. Training may help a worker survive. Before they set off on every flight, they must watch the video, how to behave if there's an emergency on your flight.
Brace impact.
They've seen it all 1,000 times.
In an emergency, if time does not permit, just tighten your lap strap and brace for impact. To exit through the windows, pull the red tab to completely remove the rubber seal.
The passengers fasten their survival suits. Made of Gore-Tex, these dry suits won't keep them afloat, but are supposed to keep the water out if the workers are thrown into the sea.
Obstruct the forward windows.
Their bright colors are also designed to make rescue easier. The trip to the Bray Alpha oil platform is 230 kilometers. If all goes well, it will take little more than an hour. Then, 120 miles out, they'll reach an area called the Gate. That's where all the helicopters split up and go their separate ways to the individual oil platforms. Bray Alpha is about 40 kilometers from the Gate. For part of the journey, the radar operators at air traffic control in Aberdeen won't be able to see them.
The reason why we lose low-level radar coverage out over the North Sea is, in essence, because the Earth is round. As the helicopter's flying outbound to an oil rig, it's actually following the curvature of the Earth.
But radar pulses travel in straight lines, which means that as they travel further and further away, a gap opens up between the surface of the Earth and the radar waves.
If an aircraft flies into that gap, then it'll disappear from radar. In the case of Aberdeen, a helicopter operating about 2,000 feet will disappear into that gap at about 80 miles.
It's a black hole, which Super Puma 56 Charlie is now entering. The helicopter and the 18 men on board are over halfway to the rigs, and from this moment on, no one knows exactly where they are. 56 Charlie is a Super Puma helicopter serving the North Sea oil platforms off the coast of Britain. It's halfway through a long flight carrying 16 passengers to the Bray Alpha oil rig. The crew is getting concerned about what they see on their weather radar. The forecast called for scattered clouds, but the weather is changing fast.
What do you think about this cloud?
It's quite thin.
Yeah, but look, we're getting some cumulus too. It's quite small, about 100 yards across.
Yeah, but it's developing a bit.
Cumulus are puffy white clouds like balls of cotton wool. They're beautiful to look at and usually harmless. They only last between 5 and 40 minutes. But helicopter pilots prefer to go above them if possible, because the air inside and below gets very bumpy.
Let's try to climb above it. Go to 5,000 feet.
Right. Oh, look, there's a line of them. All along the route exactly where we're going.
Yeah, we're not gaining anything by this.
No.
Let's drop back down to 3,000 feet.
Right.
So far, the weather is nothing to worry about. But over the North Sea, it can change suddenly. This corner of Europe is where the warm winds from the Atlantic meet the icy blasts from the Arctic and Siberia. The warm water vapor condenses into clouds, cools, then sinks. It creates strong winds, pushing the huge masses around. The friction caused by this motion can make the clouds electrically charged, and that electricity can be released as lightning. What starts out as a placid day can end up in a violent storm. It's now 1 hour after takeoff, and 56 Charlie is approaching the gate, the point where helicopters begin their descent to the individual oil platforms. They're 25 miles from their destination, and the weather is starting to get worse.
Bray traffic, 56 Charlie, 120 miles on the 056 HMR.
They make contact with Bray Traffic Watch, located on one of the oil platforms. It handles all the comings and goings of helicopters. But Bray Traffic doesn't have radar. It has to rely on the pilots to tell them where they are.
Leaving 3,000 feet, would you take the flight watch?
Roger, 56 Charlie, I have your flight watch.
Aberdeen information, Bristow's 56 Charlie at 120 miles. Leaving 3,000 feet, Bray has the flight watch.
Roger, 56 Charlie, continue with Bray traffic.
Quite suddenly, the weather has changed. Instead of the harmless fluffy balls of cotton wool, a line of dangerous cumulonimbus clouds is now blocking their path. They rise up like huge white mountains, more than 10,000 meters, far higher than the chopper can fly. Underneath, they're dark and menacing. Pilots try to avoid them at all costs. Inside, gusts of wind can reach up to 100 kilometers an hour. The turbulence can make the flight unpleasant, but that's only part of the danger.
The cumulonimbus, that's the granddaddy of all clouds. It stretches from around about 1,000 feet at its base all the way up to 30,000 feet. They are the most dangerous clouds that aircraft can come across, particularly small aircraft like helicopters. Within a cumulonimbus, you're going to find severe turbulence, you're going to find icing, you're going to find heavy rain, and of course you're going to find lightning. If you're flying a helicopter, that's not where you want to be.
Lightning is one of the most powerful forces of nature. Around the Earth, it strikes an average of 100 times per second, each strike with a power of up to 1 billion volts. Aircraft can't completely avoid it. On average, every passenger jet will be hit once a year by lightning, but the design of the planes helps prevent them being badly damaged. Their bodies are traditionally made of aluminium, which is a good conductor of electricity. The lightning passes harmlessly along the fuselage and exits from the tail. Helicopters use the same type of design to keep safe, and helicopters need it in the North Sea. With such stormy weather and so many helicopters, lightning strikes are inevitable. As they begin their descent, the Super Puma enters the line of clouds that stands in their path.
Bits of cloud coming up here.
It's okay, it's still green. Let's carry on through that.
Green on the weather radar means there's rain, but it's not heavy enough to worry about.
What the pilot sees in that is actually simply like a television screen. On that television screen he has a map, and overlaid on top of that map is a series of banded colours. If there's no rain, he has a blank map. If there's lots of rain and it's heavy, he has lots of red squares on that, and that gives you the idea of the intensity and the location of the rainfall.
On board 56 Charlie, the weather gets more intense. They begin to get pelted by hail.
Hey, where'd this come from?
It's coming in through the vent.
It's like being inside a beanbag swamped by polystyrene balls.
It's so thick. How come the engines are still running? There can't be any air left out there.
No.
Now another problem.
We've got a hard over on the ice detector.
It's probably just an ice pellet stuck in the probe.
Right.
The helicopter has an ice detector, a probe outside the craft, which is supposed to tell the pilots whether there's ice on the blades. But they think it's become jammed with ice and is giving a false reading. And then, disaster.
Bloody hell.
What was that?
Lightning, I saw it. Well, this is bad. There's something very, very wrong with this. We'll have to go down, I'm afraid.
The helicopter has been damaged, but they don't know how badly. The entire body is shaking and vibrating. The crew's first instinct is to get down to a lower altitude in case the worst happens and they fall out of the sky.
Mayday, Mayday, 5-6 Charlie, lightning strike, severe vibration. Mayday, Mayday.
40 kilometers away, another helicopter is about to leave an oil platform. Commander Brian Backhouse is loading passengers onto 56 Bravo and preparing to fly back to Aberdeen.
That's everyone. All set.
Suddenly, the loading officer hears Lionel Soul's Mayday call on his radio.
Mayday, Mayday, 5-6 Charlie, lightning strike.
Hear that, Mayday, 56 Charlie!
Gentlemen, my apologies, but we have to disembark you. We have an airborne emergency on a sister aircraft.
Backhouse hurriedly unloads his passengers. He intends to help if he can. Meanwhile, a gale is steadily building up, with winds in excess of 70 kilometers an hour. The seas are mounting. The crew of 56 Charlie are struggling to keep control of their crippled helicopter. After the initial flash, though, the situation hasn't got worse. The Grampian Freedom is a standby ship positioned near the oil rigs to give oil workers a way to escape if anything goes wrong. Her skipper, John McInnes, hears the helicopter's distress call.
We increased the speed to full speed ahead. Everybody was informed about the vessel and told to get ready for survivors to be taken aboard.
Back on the Bravo platform, what was a routine flight for Brian Backhouse is about to become a rescue mission. He intends to find the stricken helicopter and nurse it to safety. If it crashes into the sea, he'll direct rescue ships to the spot. But they're not sure where to go.
Let's go to the gate and proceed from there.
At least they have a starting point. The Grampian Freedom doesn't know where to go either. They're getting conflicting messages about where 56 Charlie is. The helicopter's tiny size and the rough seas make it hard to find. On the damaged helicopter, Commander Roberts briefs the passengers.
Gentlemen, you are obviously aware of the severe vibration. We've had a lightning strike, so please pull up your hoods, zip up your suits, and prepare for a possible ditching.
Countless hours of training is supposed to have prepared all on board for a moment like this. In a real emergency, how many will remember it?
1,200 feet. We're still flying. Let's try to make it to Bray Alpha and land there.
Their destination, the Bray Alpha platform, is now only 11 kilometers away. 3 minutes have passed since the explosion, and things don't seem to be getting any worse.
I'll just try a few small inputs, make sure everything's working. Yes, we've got control in pitch, we've got control in roll, and we've got control in yaw. Tail rotor!
The helicopter is beginning to spin round, a sure sign that something's happened to the tail rotor. The only thing the pilots can do to stop the spinning is to switch off the main rotor blade.
Power off, engines off.
Ditching has become inevitable. .56 Charlie is falling fast, more than 600 meters a minute, with the main rotor acting like a kind of parachute, the blades being turned only by the air that rushes through them.
Mayday, mayday. Tail rotor failure, ditching. Brace for emergency landing.
At this speed, they're about 40 seconds from hitting the North Sea. The other pilots in 56 Bravo are searching in vain. There's no sign of 56 Charlie in the sky or in the water. Then they hear another distress call.
Mayday, mayday. Tail rotor failure, ditching. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Relaying for 56 Charlie. We have a suspected tail rotor failure. He is ditching.
Commander Backhouse in 56 Bravo knows that he is closest to the stricken helicopter. Everything depends on him. But he's not equipped to locate the distress beacon 56 Charlie will use when it ditches. All he can do is search mile after mile of grey sea. Back on the Grampian Freedom, the crew begins searching the sea as well as the sky. But they know 56 Bravo can cover ground more quickly than the enormous, slow-moving ship. They do what they can and wait for better directions.
Floats, floats, I can't find the floats. I got it. Just keep it at trim angle. Right.
The pilots of 56 Charlie are about to attempt one of the most difficult maneuvers, ditching or landing in the middle of the heaving sea. Floats under the helicopter are meant to keep it from sinking. If they're deployed too soon before touchdown, the chopper may lose what little stability it has and topple over. Too late, and they won't inflate completely. Instead of riding the waves, the helicopter will sink below them. There's no second chance. They time it perfectly.
We're down. Seems quite stable.
They've landed safely, but no one knows if they will stay afloat. Helicopters are top-heavy, and they fear it could keel over and sink at any moment.
Let's get out of here! To the door!
They need to get the life rafts out, inflate them, and board them quickly. They fear that if the helicopter rolls over, it will trap them all inside.
Lift that end! On the rope!
You go back and help with the evacuation. I'm going to shut things down here. Right. I'm going to try one last Mayday call.
But the evacuation doesn't go smoothly. When they throw out one of the life rafts, the strong wind blows it back against the helicopter. They can't get into it.
Can't get this one down. Can we go on the other side? It's better we all stay together anyway. Off you go! Go on! Go on! Go! Go!
Mayday, mayday. 5-6 Charlie. We are on the water, floating, manning the dinghy.
He doesn't mention their position.
Make room! Get set! Make room!
The raft is dangerously overloaded. There are 18 on board, and it's only meant for 14. Water is already up to their ankles and rising. Once in the raft, they have no way of communicating where they are. For the first time, the pilots are able to see what caused the disaster. The rear rotor blade assembly and gearbox have broken off and are hanging down the side of the helicopter, held on by just a couple of pipes. No one realizes it yet, but in the rush, they've forgotten to bring the distress beacon with them from the helicopter. It sends out a signal that can be picked up by rescuers. Forgetting it could mean the difference between life and death. 2 ropes attach the life raft to the helicopter. They're meant to stop the raft from drifting away, but they'll also drag them down if the helicopter sinks. One of the passengers has a knife.
Shall I cut the line? No, not yet. We have a better chance of being spotted if we're close to the helicopter.
Problems mount. The passengers are trying to raise the canopy to protect them, but it gets stuck. Without the canopy, they're at the mercy of the waves. And then the helicopter itself becomes a danger. When the doors were jettisoned, they were supposed to be designed to slip down into the water and sink. Instead, one of them, which has a jagged edge, is floating on the surface, and it's heading straight for the raft. The life raft has been punctured by the floating door.
Come on, Bill! Bill, with everything you got, we're gonna sink! No, don't worry about it. We're not gonna sink. We've got double-layer rubber tubes here filled with air. It cannot sink. One wave and we're under. No.
The pilots do their best to put on a brave face.
There are other helicopters and ships out there. They know we're down. They heard our Mayday.
The overloaded life raft is getting lower and lower in the water. Inside, it's already waist deep. Now the pounding waves are pushing them beneath the sharp edges of the drooping helicopter blades.
We need to get some distance. We'll have to cut the line.
There are supposed to be 2 safety lines connecting the raft to the helicopter. One short, one long. But the long line is broken.
The long line's been cut. It's been shredded. You'll have to cut the short one.
The short line is the only thing attaching them to the helicopter. If they cut that, they'll quickly drift away, a tiny raft full of men at the mercy of the sea. But if they don't cut it, the jagged edges of the helicopter could tear their life raft to shreds and sink them all. 18 people have scrambled aboard a life raft after their helicopter crashed into the North Sea. The raft is overloaded. It's been punctured by the jagged metal edges of the helicopter door and is getting lower and lower in the water. They have to get away from the helicopter. Flight Officer Lionel Soule takes the fateful decision and cuts the rope. They begin to drift away into the storm. The conditions are deadly. Most of their survival suits are leaking freezing water. For a person in the water, hypothermia can begin when the temperatures of air and water added together is below 50 degrees centigrade. In the North Sea in winter, the temperature is far below that. Normal muscle and brain functions are quickly affected. The core body temperature will sink, followed by unconsciousness and death. Their chances of rescue are slim. No one knows where they are, just a tiny dot on a vast, turbulent sea.
Quiet! Quiet! I hear something! There's a helicopter!
The men are desperate. This could be their last chance.
Quickly! Pass me those flares! The flares! In the pocket behind you! Spot a flare, you fly bastard! Here it is! We're over here!
But it's all in vain. The helicopter passes by. The men can't believe it. Their only hope is gone. On 5-6 Bravo, Brian Backhouse can see only grey seas. But suddenly, his co-pilot spots something.
Contact. Right. 2 o'clock. Okay, Roger. Let's investigate. Target. Contact. Target confirmed. 56 Charlie. Stand by for position report.
Like a guardian angel, 5-6 Bravo hovers directly above the survivors for over an hour, directing rescue boats and aircraft towards this tiny speck in the ocean.
He came in and hovered fairly close because he wanted to count the number of people on board the life raft. So for a while he was right over the top of us and blowing us around a bit. But as soon as he'd got the information he wanted, he backed off and he was just marking the position for the rescue craft to find us.
First to arrive is the Grampian Freedom.
We had lookouts posted all around the vessel, some on top of the bridge, on each wing of the bridge. A helicopter came and it started crisscrossing our bow, which is not our procedure in that kind of situation.
Almost a mile away from the raft, the Grampian Freedom launches its fast rescue boat. The boat sets off at full speed to the rescue. The rain and waves make finding the raft difficult.
Hey! There's a boat! It's coming! No, don't think us! Relax, boys, they know what they're doing! Let's go! Quickly, go!
The rescue boat throws a lifeline to the stranded men, and they begin pulling themselves to safety. But there's another challenge ahead their training hasn't prepared them for.
We reached the standby boat, and you're looking at the hull, a huge steel hull. You said, I'm never going to get up there. But the crews are well trained. They wait for the swell to go up and down in the right motions.
And they have a large net hanging down the side of the boat. And they said, we're going to come alongside, we'll be on the top of the wave, and when we shout jump, you jump and grab the net. Don't look back, because we'll be gone. We came alongside, high up on the wave, grabbed the net, the wave went back down, they were away, and they pulled off. And we just climbed the last few feet over the side onto the Grampian Freedom.
Later that day, a rescue helicopter winches up 14 of the survivors and flies them back to Aberdeen. 4 of the men, however, never want to travel in a helicopter again, so they refuse to leave the Grampian Freedom. They're in for ever more misery. They're buffeted by a force 10 gale the whole of their long journey back to Aberdeen. Through their skill and against all the odds, Cedric Roberts and Lionel Soule have saved the lives of all on board.
I must admit at the time I did think that was it, we were going to die.
The whole world had changed from being really good to being what I thought was a complete disaster at that time. It was the worst situation I'd ever been in the air, and I was very worried that that was going to be it.
But the day after the accident, they came under suspicion. Their report on what happened starts being questioned.
Lightning, notionally at least, should not affect a very powerful North Sea helicopter.
This is the first time I can recall a lightning strike having ended up with this kind of conclusion.
The experts are skeptical of the pilot's story. No other helicopter is known to have crashed into the North Sea because of lightning. Perhaps there had been some mechanical failure. There were even whispers of pilot error, of recklessly flying into storm clouds. The evidence to support their story was now beneath the waves with 5-6 Charlie. The Air Accident Investigation Branch, Britain's air crash detectives, begins searching for the truth. It may look like a rig, but the stay dive is actually a ship, mostly used for servicing oil platforms. It has 9 powerful engines which keep it stable in almost any weather. And it carries miniature submarines for underwater exploration. A day after the accident, it's brought in to find and raise the missing helicopter from the bottom of the North Sea. The investigation gets off to a good start. Within a day, the television cameras on board the Stay Dive's 2 submersibles locate what's left of 5-6 Charlie on the seabed. But raising it is a different matter. carry on working into the night. Soon, several pieces of 5-6 Charlie have been recovered, but still not the vital clue, the missing tail rotor. Ed Trimble was the AAIB's lead investigator.
But the big problem was to recover the tail rotor assembly. Without that, the investigation was literally going nowhere. We knew that the tail rotor assembly had been dangling over the side of the pylon as the helicopter had ditched, and it therefore detached at some point between the ditching and where we had caught up with the main wreckage.
Keeping the stay dive going would cost another £20,000 a day. Ed Trimble rang his boss.
He was fairly skeptical of our chances. He asked what I thought our chances were of finding the tail rotor, and I, being an eternal optimist, I said 80%, to which he replied, I think you'd be very lucky if you've got a 10% chance of recovering the tail rotor assembly in the North Sea.
Ed Trimble stays up all night, relentlessly monitoring the underwater cameras.
I didn't want to be in a situation where we would have missed any evidence of further wreckage, and in particular, any parts of the tail rotor assembly.
Go get yourself a coffee, Eddie.
And by the time 8 o'clock was looming, I decided to go down to the galley to get a coffee. And I couldn't have been away any more than maximum 7 to 10 minutes when I suddenly heard these tremendously excited shouts from our team.
Yes, here we go, we found it!
As I walked in, I ran in, there, smack in the middle of the screen, was the whole of the tail rotor assembly. And even at the first glance, I could see that one of the tail rotor blades showed clear evidence of a lightning strike.
The crew was right. The submarine's cameras reveal telltale burn marks on the tail rotor blade. A close look at the wreckage on the deck reveals that 2 of the main rotor blades were also struck by lightning. But it's this tail rotor that suffered the most damage. Since lightning is not known to have forced a helicopter to crash into the North Sea before, the question is, why now? Ed Trimble called in lightning expert John Hardwick to discover just what had hit 5-6 Charlie.
What we wanted to do with this set of tests was to take a set of tail rotor blades from the Super Puma helicopter and subject them to varying energy levels of simulated lightning strikes.
The lightning objectives at Culham basically were to try and reproduce the degree of lightning damage in order to identify what kind of level of energy was associated with this particular strike.
This home video of the tests was taken by Ed Trimble. Representatives of the company that makes the Super Puma were there too. Hardwick ran the blade through several lightning strikes until he was able to reproduce the damage found on the rotor blade. To do it, he had to generate a simulated strike of enormous power. Something far more dangerous than anyone thought the helicopter would be exposed to. Something that wasn't supposed to happen over the North Sea.
There have been a few incidents over the years, minor strikes, a little bit of damage to the helicopter, but we never expected anything as severe as happened on that day.
For one brief instant, it was more than all the electrical power being consumed in the entire United States. Some 30 billion watts. And this enormous flash of lightning had happened over the North Sea, where each year almost 3 million passengers fly unsuspecting to the oil platforms.
The helicopters we fly are certified to the highest standards. It's the same as you get on a major airliner flying transatlantic. So we had no reason to believe that any lightning we had encountered would do any severe damage to the helicopter.
Ordinary lightning wouldn't. But this wasn't ordinary.
A lightning strike generates a huge pulse of energy. We can detect these pulses of energy via multiple transmitters and receivers that are situated throughout Europe. The information is calibrated locally, and once the position has been triangulated, that's passed to the Met Office in London.
When the records were examined, they showed something very peculiar. This is what they think happened. Inside cumulonimbus clouds, tiny ice crystals are swept upwards by the wind currents. At the top of the cloud, where it's much colder, they combine with other crystals to form hail. The hail, being heavy, plummets back to Earth. On the way down, it hits the rising water crystals, causing friction. The crystals become electrically charged.
On that particular day, there was very little in the way of indication that there was any significance in these clouds.
We're flying along, everything just seemed very normal. We went through what seemed to us, by comparison to what was around that day, a fairly small cloud. But there was suddenly a lot of snow and ice pellets in the air.
I've never seen as much in the way of soft hail pellets in my whole flying career. And the worrying thing was that immediately we knew that obviously there was a high level of energy in that cloud to produce that amount of soft hail, which also meant there was a high chance of there being lightning there. But by that time it was too late.
When a helicopter enters the cloud, the sharp tips of its whirling rotor blades cut through these crystals, causing more friction, more electricity, until it's all released in a blinding flash. The records showed that the flash which hit 5-6 Charlie had been the only one recorded over the North Sea that day, caused almost certainly by the helicopter itself. However, for some reason, nearly all the damage had been confined to the tail rotor. What was it about the tail rotor that had made it especially vulnerable? Then Ed Trimble made a remarkable discovery. When the Civil Aviation authorities certified the Super Puma as safe, they had missed something important, something which may have caused 5-6 Charlie to fall from the sky. Safety investigators examined the wreckage of a helicopter which crash-landed in the North Sea. As they study the ruined aircraft more closely, they uncover the cause of the accident. When the British Civil Aviation Authority laid down the Lightning safety standards, they were looking at fiberglass blades, then the normal material for helicopter rotors. But in the 1980s, plane makers began using the new composite materials, like carbon fiber, which were lighter and stronger. In particular, they began making the rotor blades out of carbon fiber instead of fiberglass. It was assumed that the same standards would apply equally to the new blades. In the industry, that's known as read across, and it's very dangerous. In fact, it was the very design of these composite blades which brought down 5-6 Charlie. Although made of carbon fiber, composite blades have a metal anti-erosion strip glued on to protect the edge. That's where the trouble starts.
Carbon is a conductor of electricity, but it's 1,000 times worse than aluminium. So you get 1,000 times as much heat produced.
The carbon blade gets very, very hot. And when the current meets the metal strip running along the edge, there is furious arcing and sparking, until finally part of the erosion strip explodes. As little as 100 grams of the erosion strip flew off, but it was enough. Without its weight, the rear rotor was unbalanced. That's what caused the vibration felt on board 5-6 Charlie immediately after the lightning strike. 3 minutes later, when Lionel Soule tested out the controls, the unbalanced blades put the tail rotor under enormous stress. The bolts holding it on snapped.
We've lost the tail rotor! Tail rotor's gone!
It was like a blowout in a car, only much, much worse. Things at that point were really very, very worrying. We both knew what had happened. We'd lost the tail rotor. And if you don't do exactly the right thing at that point, your life expectancy is very short. It's seconds. We had to do the right thing. We managed to point it into wind, and there was quite a big sea building up. And at 100 feet, I pulled back on the stick to flare the helicopter, slow down its rate of descent, and we were very fortunate at that point. A nice friendly wave came along, and as I leveled the helicopter, a wave came up. We sat on the top of it, and we went down, and it was one of the best landings I've ever done, but that was luck more than judgment.
As bad as it was, it could have been worse, The two hydraulic pipes connecting the assembly to the helicopter did not break.
These two small diameter pipes had held the mass of the gearbox and tail rotor assembly dangling over the right side of the pylon.
Without the weight of the rotor assembly, the helicopter would have tipped forward.
Had that tail rotor gearbox and tail rotor assembly completely separated from the helicopter, then all 18 lives would have been lost because the helicopter would have pitched down irrecoverably and gone into the North Sea.
The investigators found the answer to the mystery of a helicopter crash, but they stumbled across a bigger problem, one that affects every air traveler. Investigators believe that 56 Charlie's violent end was caused by a savage lightning strike greater than anything it was built to withstand. And when the lightning hit, it exposed a problem in the carbon fiber blades that made them vulnerable. The tremendous heat created where the carbon fiber met the metal erosion strip could occur again. And the same type of violent reaction could hypothetically take place in any aircraft that has carbon fiber mixed with other materials. Increasingly, aluminium is being replaced with carbon fiber. The world's largest plane, the A380 Airbus, for instance, has over 20%. What will happen if these planes encounter a monster lightning strike? This was the investigators' biggest concern arising out of this Super Puma accident. The findings were unexpected and treated with some skepticism. Though the tests indicated that an unexpectedly large lightning strike hit 56 Charlie, Britain's Civil Aviation Authority refused to accept it. No action was taken to increase the safety standards that these helicopters must meet.
I thought that the reaction was poor. There seemed to be a real reluctance on their behalf to accept the evidence.
If Britain's air crash detectives are right, there is a real concern facing air travelers. Flashes of lightning far greater than aircraft are supposed to encounter are possible. And aircraft made of newer composite materials are at increased risk. For the Super Puma, though, the lessons have been learned. The design of the rotor blades has been vastly strengthened. The erosion strips are now secured with heavy bolts, and pilots have been instructed to give storm clouds a wider berth. The men who must fly these machines to work are prepared to accept the risks.
Well, I think the morning we ditched, we were very, very fortunate because the outcome could have gone horribly wrong, but we survived. We got home. My feelings of that morning was this could never happen to me. Now, when I fly in a chopper, especially in the winter time, if it's going to be buffed about with wind, I sometimes get in the back of your mind, this can't happen to me again. But we've all a choice. We've all a choice either to stop or we carry on. And I'm still there 25 years later, still learning and living.
The crash of 56 Charlie was a hair-raising incident that could so easily have ended in tragedy. In the winter of 1995, the skill of Commander Ced Roberts and Flight Officer Lionel Soule saved the lives of their 16 passengers. Roberts and Soule receive an award for their work. The Guild of Air Pilots and Air Navigators recognized their skill and bravery in the emergency landing.
Although we received a number of awards after the incident from various organisations, one thing I received, which is far more precious to me than any of them, was from the daughters of one of my passengers. It was this little card. It says, "Dear Captain Roberts, I can't tell you how much I need to thank you after you saved my dad's life. It took a lot of effort to try to keep calm while you were falling. If you hadn't have got that helicopter in control, my dad maybe wouldn't be here today. Thank you very, very, very much."